All right, happy St. Patty's Day. We're going to be doing a really cute little St. Patrick's Day gnome. And I'm going to start by using a 1-inch flat brush like this. So make sure you grab something somewhat big. And I'm using a 8x10 wrapped canvas. So it's like a little bit of bounce on it. You could use a panel canvas as well. So it's whatever you want to do. I'm going to take this first and I'm going to start with a blue. So I'm getting just a blue on my brush and I'm going to go to the bottom of the canvas and I'm going to flick up. And I'm doing my pressure, pushing a little harder at first and then releasing pressure as I come up. I'm going to go a little further up on the right and left sides than I am going to go through the middle. So this is a fun technique I like to do for these little scenes, these little garden scenes. Again, I'm doing like a little vertical pull. And I'm going a little higher on the right and left side than I am going through the middle. So it's a little higher. Then we're going to add yellow. So I'm not cleaning the brush or anything. I'm just adding. So I'm going to take some yellow on the brush and go right on top of the blue. And I don't want to like over blend it because notice how I can get some different pops where it looks a little more yellow in some spots. You want to try to leave it a little unblended. It's going to be fun. And then you can always go back and add more blue. So see how I can get some more blue on my brush and then go back to the bottom again and kind of layer that in. It's going to make it look a little darker and a little more greenish down there. So you can do that if you'd want to. And just to make sure that your canvas is covered really well at the bottom. And you can, once you feel like, okay, that's good, you got enough of the color in there, you can stop. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add a ton of white to our brush. So you should get like a turquoise color. If you have blue with a little bit of yellow. And all I'm going to do is put this colors like on the edges of the canvas and we're going to make a rainbow or in the middle. So what I want to do is add a ton of white. Notice how it's getting really, really light. Added a ton of white to that. Again, I have mostly blue with a little bit of yellow and this gives you this turquoise color. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go kind of in the middle here. Find the middle and then come out on either side so that you're leaving a big gap in the center. And on the right side, I'm going to make a diagonal that pulls up like that. And then on the left side, I'm going to make a diagonal that pulls up into the corner. So see how I'm going like this? Okay, and then I kind of want my turquoise to be a little more blue. So I'm adding a little more blue to it. And I'm keeping it really light. Now, if you can't get your color as light as you want, you might need to clean your paintbrush. So just put it in the water and swirl it around. Sometimes you just gotta reset your paintbrush. Sometimes I see people get kind of frustrated with color mixing because their color isn't doing what they want. Just clean your paintbrush and start over. And then notice I can add a bunch more white right into that color. And now I can get my shade a lot lighter. So I really want a light shade here. And then I'm just going to move in a diagonal brush stroke to fill in this space right here. And it's okay if you pull into the grass color a little bit and pull that up into the sky. It's going to make it look kind of fun. And we're going to do another layer on the background, so it's okay if it does that. I like to be really loose with my style. It makes painting more fun. So if you're one of those people that feels like you have to make it perfect or do it right, you're in the right spot because I'm going to help you get over that because it really can stop you from being creative if you're trying to control it too much. There we go. Now we have some colors through the middle. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put some rainbow colors through the center. So make sure you have sky color all done. You have the grass at the bottom, and then we're going to clean the brush again. Now for the rainbow, we can take a smaller square brush. That way we get our colors where we want them to go. And then we're just going to work through our colors. And I'm going to start with the red on the right, and then we're going to move to the left. So I'm going to get a pastel. I want it to be pastel. So I'm going to mix white into the red. So it might look a little more pinkish, but that's just what I want to do. You can do more of a solid red if you want. but I'm mixing red and white. And then I'm going to put that on the right side. And I'm trying not to blend it with that background color because it's not going to look too good mixed together. That turquoise and that red. It's okay if they kind of mix a little, but you don't want to get too crazy. Let's see how that looks, kind of fun. And then we're going to gradually add yellow to the red to get some orange vibes. And I still want some white mixed in because, again, I want it to be kind of pastel. And then I'm going to go right next to the pink and pull in that yellow mixed with the red for that orange color. And then when you want it to look more yellow, you got to clean the brush. And then just get yellow with white. So clean it and then go yellow and white. And then that can be pulled right in on top of and next to the orange. So fun. Don't overanalyze this part. Notice how I can pull it down into the grass right here and kind of blend the grass into the grass color into the rainbow color at the bottom. And do that a little bit. And then I'm gonna, you don't have to clean it for the next one if you want, but remember, anytime your colors get kind of going where you don't want it to go, clean your brush. But for the next one, we do want some green, so we're just gonna use the yellow, white, and then add a little bit of blue. And then that'll give us more of a green color. And again, that can blend right down into the grass because the grass is pretty green as well. Use that white to make it look more pastel if you want. And just pull it right up against the yellow. And then we're going to pull it into more of a blue color. So you might want to clean the yellow out of your brush. And then we're going to do some blue and white. No yellow this time. And that'll go right next to the green. And then last but not least, we're going to do some purple in that last little section. Clean the brush for this, just in case. Then I'm going to mix the blue and red and white. So you can even mix some blue into the pink if that's easier. I usually do heavy on the red for the purple that I'm doing. A lot of red. And then the white is going to make it look lighter. Okay, so mixing that purple, again adding the white to it. A lot of red. And then pull that in right next to the blue. Now, if it's pretty dark like that, just clean the brush and you can put some pink over it. So see, I can put some pink over the purple. I'm just mixing some pink by itself. And that can go right at the edges. And then I'm going to blend it into the green. And that'll look kind of muddy, but that's okay. All right, so now we've got our rainbow. If you want to soften it at all, you can always just take your brush and put some white on top of it. So if it feels too dark, you can always just add a little bit of white on top of any of the colors while it's still wet, and it will lighten the colors. So see, I can just pull over some of the colors with a little bit of white. Be careful as you do this though, if your paint picks or brush picks up too much of the color, it will blend, and you might not want to blend all the colors. So just be careful, check your brush. But I like to show that you can soften it and kind of blend it out a little more by just adding white over the top. But make sure you clean your brush if you're doing that as you go between your colors. I'm doing a little bit over the purple too because the purple got really dark. So it's, you know, you can kind of touch that up as you want to. And then you're going to want to let this dry a little bit before we go ahead and layer on top of it. So let's let it dry. All right, so once the background is dry, you can start to layer the little character on top. And I do suggest working with like any kind of round brush is going to be pretty good for this. I'm going to center everything. So what I want to do is find the middle of the canvas. Just kind of bring your brush and your finger, make sure the brush is dry and not wet, just to find the middle. And then you can grab a little bit of white paint on your brush and just make a little dot right there. And then right here is where we're going to put the nose of our little leprechaun gnome. So I'm going to make a little circle. And then right above that circle, I'm going to make a little hat. And I want to make sure that it goes about 1/3 of the way across through the middle. So it should take up about 1/3 of the canvas in the middle. So if I have 1/3 here, 1/3 in the middle, and 1/3 on the left, you're going in the middle 1/3 here. And then you can make a little hat that's kind of funky. Let's go up. And we'll kind of make it kind of curl around like this. So see, I can just make the tip of the hat and then you can pull down, come through the middle, and then you're going to want to triangulate the whole thing into a shape. I like to make it a little wiggly. It's kind of fun, but you can make it more straight if you want, really however you want. Totally fine. But I'm just going to put a layer of white. And then the beard is going to come underneath. So we're going to go ahead and just paint down on either side of the hats and then pull little brush strokes coming down. And you can kind of leave a little bit of space between the nose and the hat just to remember where your shapes are. But I want to get a nice layer of white in there. This is just going to create a base for us to build a character off of. So it'll be a little easier to see where everything's going to go. I'm just creating a base layer. So we have our hat, our nose, and our beard. Okay. Now while that dries just a bit, we'll take a smaller round paintbrush and we can make some more details in the grass down below. So what I'm going to do is take some blue and yellow mixed together. And what I can do is pull some vertical lines pulling up, coming from that grass area. Just like this. Just like little wiggly lines. I actually prefer them to be a little bit of a darker shade of green for this, but you can do any shade of green you like. Just make sure it stands out against the background. And notice I can pull it up pretty high on the sides. I really want to make it look kind of fun. We can do some clovers too, some 4-leaf clovers. That would be fun. I'm just wiggling and pulling up. It's so fun. You can turn some of these wiggly lines into little leaves. I'll show you that in just a second. But I definitely want you to make sure you can pull some little brush strokes down in the bottom too, just to add more texture. Really whatever you want to do here to touch up the grass is what we're playing with. But for example, if I wanted to turn one of these little pieces of grass into like a little leaf pattern, you can just come to the tip, put a little stamp, like barely touching the tip of the brush. And then if you go to the right and left, like almost like a V. So for example, I just kind of come up to the little line and I can go on the left side and just barely touch the tip and then do it on the other side too. And then you can go down on both sides doing that same idea. So if you don't have to do that, but it is something I like to do in these little scenes because I think I like the look of it. It's just kind of my style or whatever, you know. You can even switch into a smaller brush, like notice the difference in the size. So if I wanted to do the same thing on a different piece of grass or something, like maybe I want to come here, but I want it to look smaller, I can use that smaller brush and do the same idea, but make it smaller. So play around with different size brushes. You know, you don't have to do anything, but these are fun ideas to try, or maybe come up with your own um, little way to put in some leaves or foliage. It's totally up to you how you want to execute it. But again, you can just take some more of that green and just pull some little strokes down below for texture. Really is the more detail, the better, because it's going to make it look more interesting. And then you can put some little 4-leaf clovers. So those are fun. You're basically just making little hearts that go around the little clovers. So you can just make like a little heart shape and then do another little heart. And then another heart. And all I'm doing to make a heart is make a V. And then you can do another one at the bottom. So making a little 4-leaf clover type, like little pattern. And you can just do a regular 3-leaf clover too if you want. They don't all have to be any certain way. I just recommend playing around with these ideas for this one. We do want to make it like St. Patrick's Day theme, so that's why I'm putting the little clovers, but you don't have to do that. Just do as many as you want. Some of them can just remain like grass, so you don't have to put anything on the tip of all of them. You know, you can just pick and choose. Maybe make some bigger, some smaller. I like to get a variety of size, because if you make them all the exact same size, that could feel kind of monotonous. So it's fun to do a variety of size. And then you can always layer on top with another shade of green. So if I just put one base layer down and then I add more yellow to my brush, and then I just dab another layer on top with another shade, that can look kind of fun. You don't have to do that, but it does add a little more depth to the painting to do those things. And you're not covering the first layer all the way. You're just adding to it, so that in the end you see a few shades on there. You can even add some of that lighter shade of green down in the bottom, little dots. You know, whatever. See how I can just dab some yellow in there? That looks kind of cool. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna just take some yellow and just dab little dots down below. It looks pretty cool. I like the way that looks. Maybe it's like gold coins. Maybe it's just some little yellow flowers. And we're just waiting for this to dry. Okay. And remember, you can always add more. So I'm just putting that for now. And then I'm going to go ahead and start coloring in the beard and the hat. And I'm going to go back to like that larger square brush, or sorry, round brush, larger round brush. And I'm going to make the hat green. So we're going to go ahead and take blue and yellow. I want to go with like kind of a dark green first, like we did with the clovers. So once you get that on your brush, just go ahead and paint your hat. Again, this can be any color you want. It doesn't have to be green. I'm just coloring it in that base color to start. Then we'll come back to it and add some more color. But the nose we're gonna do, I'm gonna clean the brush. We're just gonna do that like a peach color. So I'm just gonna take some yellow and red and white until you get a peachy color. So you can kind of customize that. And then I'm gonna paint that a base coat of peach. And then for the beard, we're gonna do like red. So I'm starting with red. And we're gonna go a little bit, I'm just gonna go under the hat and under the nose. I'm just underlining that portion. Okay. And we're just gonna pull some brush strokes down like this. And then ultimately I want it to be like orange. So I'm just starting with the red and then I'll add yellow to the red to make orange. And then you can add that right on top. Same thing, I'm just pulling vertically down. And then we're gonna let it dry a little bit. And then you can go into like a smaller round brush. We can put some little shoes. I'm gonna take a little bit of black and we're gonna go right under the beard here. And I'm just gonna make two little rainbow shapes on either side. Like that. And then I'm gonna put an underline under it. So it's just almost like a half circle or a half moon kind of shape to make some little shoes down here. You could also use the black to add some dark color down on the bottom, little grass brush strokes that are like really dark if you want to. You want to have some darkness in the color. And then we can also make a really dark shade of green by mixing black into our green. So if I have yellow and blue plus black, it's going to give me a really dark shade of green. And I want to put this on the left side of the hat and on the underside of the part that's curved right here. So we just want this really dark shade. And I can go like on the underside of the hat too here. You put some of that dark green at the bottom. So you could have black, but you could also just make that dark green shade. You want to have lots of different shades, especially just to create some contrast. So now that I have that on the left side, I'm going to clean the brush and I'm going to do some shadow colors for the rest of the gnome. So let's do some for the beard, which I want to do red and black. So red with a little bit of black is going to give me a good shadow color for the beard. I can have a little bit of yellow mixed in too if you want to make it a little more brownish. Or you can just use red and black to keep your color mix a little more simple. It's really up to you, but I do want it to be rather dark. You don't want it to be, it shouldn't look black, but it should look pretty dark. You want it to have some darkness. And then I'm going to basically go under the hat little brush strokes, and under the nose. So notice how it looks a little darker. And then you can pull some of that dark color into the beard too. So I'm gonna pull that down into the beard. And don't worry, we'll go back and forth a little bit with the colors. So even though this is gonna look kind of intense for a second, it'll come back into a lighter color, but you gotta have some different shades going on. You gotta have that dark mix with the light, otherwise it just looks really, really flat. So if your painting is like hard to layer, like it's too wet and you can't get your colors to layer or stick, just use a blow dryer or just wait to layer. So you can just wait for it to dry. And you also want your nose to have a few shades. So we've got some shades on the hat. We're doing some shades here. The nose can have some shades, and you can use a little bit of that black mixed into the nose color to make it darker. Just a bit. You can also just use more red and yellow and less white to make it darker, but that would be a little more orange-ish, but it would still create a darker shade. Be careful with the, see how I put a lot and it's like, whoa, that kind of took over really fast. So be careful with the black. It'll take over pretty quick. So we're just going for like a darker peach tan color. So once you have something like that, you can brush it on the underside of the nose, on the bottom of the nose. And you can do a little bit under the hat too. The hat would probably cast a shadow on the nose, so you don't want it to be too bright right at the top of the nose. And then I'm just cleaning my brush between the color. And then I'm going to make like a lighter shade of green for the hat too. So I'm going to get some more yellow on there mixed into my green. So blue and yellow, but more yellow and maybe even a little bit of white mixed in. And then that can go on the top of the hat and the right side. So I'm just doing the opposite side. You can kind of brush it and blend it in a bit, or you can leave it a little bit more unblended. It's up to you. And I'm going to go along the top of the hat too, like just the top brim. You can even use some pure white, give it a little sparkle. Let's see, I just dip the brush in white and then you can add that to it. Totally up to you. And you can even use some of that dark green to reestablish a shadow if you got too much of the bright color. Or you can go back to your medium shade of green, like just the regular, kind of more of the first shade that we used. So you can always adjust your colors by just going back to more of a medium shade of green, and then you can paint over, like, so for example, I just come in with that like blue and yellow, more even mix. You can paint over the shadow a little bit. See how I'm going over the shadow just a bit? And you can go over the highlight just a bit to smooth it out and blend it in. So it's just a matter of going back to that first kind of more medium color. And you can paint over things and just sort of smudge it out and blend it out. So don't stress if you feel like, oh, I got it way too dark or I got it way too bright. Just go back and forth between your dark and light colors until you feel like, yeah, that's pretty good. But you want to see at least 3 shades. You should see a dark, medium, and light. You want to see all of those shades in pretty much every section of the painting. For the nose, you can go in with like a lighter, some more white mixed in to the peach. So you can, clean your brush, go back to your peach color, but this time make more white mixed into it to make a lighter shade and put that towards the middle of the nose. And again, you can always go back to that first medium shade, blend out your shadows and your highlights a little bit, just like you did with the hat. So you can kind of go around back and forth until you like the way the colors look. But you should see darker around the edges of the nose shape and lighter towards the center of the shape. And then you can go back into the beard again. So those dark shadow colors look pretty awkward in the beard. But you can go back and just clean your brush, do some more red again. Do some red on top of the dark color, just like add to it. And then you can go back in and add the yellow, just like we did the first time we went in, to make that orange, and layer that on top. And just blend that right into the red. And you can even see some pure yellow in the beard, just to give it some highlight. So if you're not getting a light enough shade, use a little bit of white mixed in to the yellow, white and yellow, and then try layering that on top of the orange and see what happens. So you can kind of take that in. It'll give you a little bit of a highlight color. And if it's a little too much, just mix in a little bit of red to the yellow and it will give you more of a peach color. Maybe that's a little more subtle and you might maybe like that more. So just find what works for you, but you want to see some dark, medium, and light for the beard. And you can always go in with a smaller brush. You can go back to the darker shade again. So sometimes you just have to dance back and forth with this a little bit until it looks the way you want. But you do want those darker colors right under the hat and under the nose. You can even use pure black if you want it to get really, really extreme. So some people like to do that, like more of an extreme contrast. It's fun. You just be careful so you're not like completely taking over the color with that. Sometimes it can get a little carried away. So just, make sure it doesn't get too crazy. And then again, you can even do some highlights with the smaller brush too. So, I would say play with your brushes, play with your colors until you're happy with the way it looks. And then you can put some little highlights on the shoes too. Maybe you want to do that with like light blue or something. That could be a fun color to highlight the shoes with. That's what I would do. So just put a little bit of a highlight to the top of those little black shoes. And then again, you can even add more clovers. Just clean your brush. You can put some grass coming over the beard. See, I can pull onto the beard with the grass. This will make it look a little more natural. So you can kind of go around the shoes and play with that a little bit. You can have some little leaves. You can go and do some more little dots, like those little yellow dots. You can do some white dots in the bottom. Maybe that looks pretty too. So I'm going to clean the small brush. I can go in and put some white dots down here. This looks a little more sparkly. You can do some like white highlights on the beard. Sometimes just adding a little bit of white highlights to things can make things look a little shiny. I like doing that, but you don't have to. You can even do it on like the little clovers. Just put a couple little brush strokes of white to the tips. And just putting little dots in the grass too is gonna make it look interesting. And then if any highlights get too crazy, like my hat highlight, I didn't just feel like that was too much. Just come in with the base color again, and you can always tone things down. So that's pretty much it. It's a very, very simple little St. Patrick's Day gnome. Again, you can always come in and add more details. Like I want to turn this into some little grass right here. Look, that little piece of grass look kind of sad to me, so I'm gonna mess with it a little bit. Or just adding more grass, more dots. You can really go on until you're like, go on for as long as you want. As long as you're having fun, go for it. But I'm gonna call mine done right now. And again, thank you for watching. This is my new YouTube channel. Super helpful if you like, subscribe, comment. It just helps more people see the video, and maybe they're looking to learn how to paint, and this could be a fun thing to spread the joy of painting, which I love to do. So I hope you had fun. Thanks so much for watching. Have a good day. Bye.